back in the 60s, when Tony Richardson adapted Evelyn Waugh's novel, The Loved One, for the screen, it was sold as the movie with something to offend everyone. Do you think you could have dusted off that tagline for Eddington?
Yeah, probably. I like The Loved One a lot. Didn't Terry Southern write that script?
Indeed.
That's right. That's a very fun film. I love
Rod Steiger,
Rod Steiger in that film with his
Mr.
mother.
Joy Boy.
Yeah, exactly. Rod Steiger is so good in that movie. So funny. Um, yeah, sure. Let's dust that off. New tagline for Eddington.
Now, Eddington has been described by many people, including yourself, as a Western. But wouldn't you say it's also a Western, a film noir, and a 70s paranoid thriller all bunched together in one awesome package?
Sure. Um, I would say certainly paranoid thriller, but I would say a 2020s paranoid thriller, sort of an update on maybe the 70s paranoid thriller. Um, given that it now needs, given that it's I mean, obviously I'm being literal there that it's set in the 2020s, but it's also inflected by a modern realism, which is another way of saying that all the characters in the film are living in the internet. And so I think it is changed by that new reality. This and that fracturing of reality.
Now, you referred to the COVID lockdown as sort of like an inflection point, maybe not the beginning of something or the end of something, but definitely, inflection point. Uh, I'm wondering if, during the lockdown, we were left alone with our thoughts too much, that maybe being left alone with your thoughts is the equivalent of hanging out with bad company.
Yeah, well, I think we're all kind of living in our heads these days. And I think at that time, yes, we were living with our own thoughts, but we were also having our thoughts, guided. And we're all kind of living in a system right now that's based on feedback, which is another way of saying that we are kind of stuck in place. There's a stasis, and a constant regurgitation and feeding on the same stuff.
Everybody in your movie, just about everybody in your movie, is recording on their phones. Everything from an impromptu campaign speech to a riot or a mini riot. Uh, are we in an age now where it isn't real unless it's captured on video?
Yeah, I think we're living in a very weird time. And the human capacity for adaptation is amazing. So, anything becomes normal once it becomes ambient. But but we make plans now so that, we can memorialize it and turn it into a memory. Um, and that alone changes, how we engage with the world. Um, and I think a big part of this movie is about how the virtual makes reality fake. And all of these people are, they're always on their phones and they're sort of receiving these messages from this other realm, and that changes us.
Now, parallel to what's going on in Eddington, the city, uh, the George Floyd situation. Now, there's a case where, people might not have believed that happened had it not been captured on video. So, I mean, I guess you could make the argument that there are some things you should want captured on video, and then there are other things you should be very wary of where this video came from and who
Yeah.
manipulated it.
Well, that's absolutely right. And even at the time, despite the video evidence, um, you know, uh, people found ways to have arguments about whether that was murder or not. Um, and uh, and I would say that that was a more innocent time because it came before AI generated imagery and audio and video now. Um, the this age of distrust that we're living in just became much more dangerous because we are now in a place where nothing we see online is to be trusted. Um, and I don't know what that's going to do to us, but given the fact that we do live online, which is something that began once we could carry it on our person, right? But uh, but yeah, I can you imagine what that would have been like if that video surfaced today?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You would not have been able to get a lot of people to believe it was real, that it wasn't AI.
Yeah.
Why was it important for this story to be told within the confines of a small town, and specifically a Western small town?
I'm from New Mexico. I've always wanted to make a film in New Mexico, and just to make a film about the Southwest. It's the region that I know best, um, and uh, and that landscape kind of befits that genre. But I also find the Western very interesting because it's sort of the national genre. It's about the building of America. It's about law versus lawlessness. It's about borders, um, and uh, and it felt appropriate to this moment because we're sort of living through the collapse of something and we're also on the cusp of something. So we're standing on the edge of a new frontier. um, and I was interested in updating the genre for this moment.
Your movie insinuates, if it doesn't come out, said that these fissures were already there before the lockdown started, before COVID started. And again, being alone with your thoughts, I mean, being cut off from, you know, day-to-day activities, being alone with yourself and the internet. COVID brought out the worst in many of us. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think COVID brought out the worst in many of us. I think it allowed uh it created a space for some very cynical, manipulative people to provide answers uh to very urgent questions. Um and I think a lot of charlatans kind of seized the moment. Um and it was a moment where we were all very lost. We all knew something very bad was happening and something wrong uh was something was wrong. And uh given the nature of the internet and these algorithms we've been kind of locked into, everybody kind of had a different answer as to what that thing was. And that's what this movie is about. It's about a bunch of people who are living in a different reality from their neighbor. Um, and so it's about a community that is not a community. It's people living in the same rooms, but not on the same plane. And it's about what happens when those people start to bump up against each other. And it's about the logic that comes out of that grips them all and pushes them deeper into their paranoia and conviction, and about how that leads to violence.
One of the many things that intrigue me about this film is I guess it would not be accurate to call them fake outs, but moments where you think, okay, we're being set up for something here, and then it either doesn't pay off or it doesn't pay off the way you expect it to. The moment when somebody realizes they recognize someone else's handwriting. The moment when somebody coughs for the first time when they're disposing of an inconvenient corpse. A blast from the past, a mention of the murder hornets. Were you conscious of that? Were you conscious of, okay, I'm putting this here and people are going to think it's going to lead to something else, but this isn't Chekhov's gun?
Chekhov is somebody I'm always thinking about because I think what's brilliant about Chekhov is that he'll set up a familiar situation, and he'll end uh, that story the way that kind of life tends to go, right? So he's sort of the king of the. I'm not sure if it's the anticlimax or the ambiguous climax, but he leaves you with more complication than that than than where we've began. Um, I find genre very interesting because people come in with expectations. Um, it's sort of it's a set language that everybody understands, and uh, I find it I find it fun to sort of upend those things, or um, or maybe leave a question hanging. Um, I find that just as a viewer more interesting. And so it's what I try to do in my work. And this is a movie about uh, disconnected realities, and we have many different characters who are on very different paths. And so it's kind of deliberately um, unresolved in a lot of different uh, ways.
Okay, we got time for one last question. I've talked about this with directors ranging from Clint Eastwood to Alan Rudolph. The idea that, it's your movie until the first time you show it to an audience. Then it's their movie. They decide who really did what, who really did live happily ever after. Now, I've already read some interpretations of your movie that, kind of counter to mine, I have to be honest, in terms of, for example, who should we believe, Ted or Joe, regarding an incident in the past? Uh, are you amused by this? Are you looking at some reviews or analysis and go, boy, they got that one wrong, but said, well, yeah, but I can see how they may have thought that.
I would be more amused if I wasn't so scared about the path we're on. I'm I'm kind of living in a state of dread right now. I wrote the script in a state of dread. I made the film in a state of dread, and now I'm releasing it in a into uh, a world I think that's kind of gripped by dread. And I'm with them, you know. But it's a film that's about polarization, and we're expecting a polarized response. The worst thing that we could get would be like a shrug on a film like this. I, uh, but that is true that whenever you release a film, it leaves you, and it's always a very disorienting experience for me. No matter how the film is received, whether it's widely embraced or met with maybe a more complicated response. There's something heartbreaking about it leaving you, because for so long you're just working with your collaborators and you're kind of living in the world of the film, and you're getting it just right, as far as or as close as you can to what feels just right, and then it leaves you and it's no longer yours. And that's at this point that's a platitude, uh, but it is, like every filmmaker has said this in one way or another, but it is true. It is true. It's not mine anymore. It's yours.